This is championship football. Now, here's your host, Ryan Waters.
On the eve of the Canadian Bowl, the BCFC champion Vancouver Island Raiders had their final practice of the 2010 season. They've looked at the game film, run their drills, and have made final preparations for the national championship. Saturday, they'll take on arguably the best team they've ever faced in a Canadian Bowl as they look for their third straight title and fourth in the last 5 years. Standing in their way are the big bodies of the Saskatoon Hilltops. Friday in Saskatoon, the Raiders got a blast of Saskatchewan weather in the form of ice fog, making practice very uncomfortable and even canceling a number of flights. However, it was warm and toasty inside the Intergold Banquet of Champions. The voice of the Raiders, Dom Abassi, tells us what the two-time defending champions did on the eve of the Canadian Bowl.
Well, Ryan, we had the boys had some practice this morning. They got on Griffith Stadium for the first time, and it was the field was good. It was a little bit frozen. The turf was definitely hard at Griffiths, and I got a feel for the fans because all the bleachers were just frozen rock solid. So those aren't going to be all that fun to sit on tomorrow. But, the Raiders had a practice at Griffiths in the morning, and then a team lunch, and then another practice, a short one, at an indoor practice facility, a dome bubble field. And then it was back to the hotel to get all pretty and get ready for the Banquet of Champions.
Well, I want to talk about the banquet in just a second, but how are the guys coping with the freezing cold temperatures?
You know what? It's been interesting. There are a couple of guys complaining. I mean, Dustin Peterson comes to mind for one of the receivers. He's really not been enjoying practices all that much, but really, you know what? It's not a huge factor, especially obviously at the indoor field this afternoon. All the guys were actually out in their shorts and their sleeveless Under Armours. But this morning at the field, it was -7, and the forecast, basically, I checked it on my cell phone, and it said ice fog. So I've never even heard of that before, but that was the situation, and it wasn't great. But the guys, you know what? It doesn't seem to faze them too much.
Well, how's the buzz around the team right now, the eve before the biggest game of some of their lives?
Really kind of weird because it's just a calm buzz. It's just kind of a let's get this going and let's do this finally. I think the 2 weeks really, with the 2 weeks off before this game from both teams' conference finals, really kind of allows the teams to think about it so much that they finally get sick of thinking about it. Yeah. And now it's time to just play. And honestly, the buzz with the Raiders right now is just relaxed and kind of a quiet confidence, I would call it, and definitely anxious. You can tell that they're just tense and anxious, but relaxed at the same time, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, well, Friday night, you mentioned it already, the Intergold Banquet of Champions. You had a chance to be there. 11 members of the British Columbia Football Conference were named All-Canadians. Were you surprised by any of the nominations?
You know what? I wasn't surprised by any of them. Maybe, some guys left off the list that certainly could have had some nods in certain areas, but no, you know what? Not surprising. If you look down the list of some of the BCFC guys, obviously Drew Diggu and Steve Dogie and Jesse Warwell, well, you really can't argue any three of those guys because they were some of the best players at their position this year. And then the same thing goes with the Raiders. I mean, Michael Schaefer obviously setting a new receiving record. Jordan Botel led the country in rushing, and Jordan Yance ultimately became the Offensive Player of the Year. So you can't really argue with any of those picks. One I do find interesting, and I think it kind of rests on what he's done in the league more in the past, is Scott Milton, because he really missed actually quite a lot of games this year due to injury, and that's not to slight Scott in any way. He is, in my opinion, one of the finest offensive linemen in this country, but in this season, was he one of the best the entire season? Well, you could argue that, but we're proud of Scott, and I know the team is, and he certainly earned that award as well.
Offensive Player of the Year, you mentioned it, Jordan Yance, the quarterback of the Raiders. You've seen him all season long, 33 touchdown passes, 182 completions, set a new BCFC record. Is he that good, or does he have a lot of weapons around him? What does Jordan bring to this football team?
He is that good. I mean, he really is, Ryan. He's just a leader, and he's everything. I mean, you want your quarterback to be. Every cliche in the book you can throw at him. He's the leader and the general and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It comes out of him naturally, and his teammates rally around him, and he prepares hard. He works hard, and, he's been the first guy knocking on my door, knocking on coach's door, saying, hey, can we get the dining room to watch film in right now? I want to get the receivers together and watch film. And actually after Thursday, the Raiders had a couple of pretty poor practices, to be quite honest. And Jordan called the offense together and basically said, "Hey, this isn't good enough, and this is what we need to do." And he's just so motivated right now to be playing here in Regina. His family was at the banquet, his mom and his brothers, and he was so happy to win that award in front of his friends and family. And you know what? He's fired up. Everybody knows about the comments that Reed Quest made, and he played Team Sask with Chase Bradshaw on the other side. So there's all sorts of storylines surrounding Jordan Yance, and he loves it.
Fun being part of a national champion, isn't it, when those stories within the game kind of creep up?
Well, it's what it's all about, really. I mean, it's especially as a broadcaster. I mean, that's what we're looking for, is storylines and things to draw the attention of the fans and draw people into it. And there's no lack of it here. I mean, it's just two of the league's finest franchises ready to just bash heads and get it on. And you know what? I think that's the number one thing I've noticed around here with all the executives and all the people that aren't directly involved with either of the teams. They just say, "Hey, I can't wait to watch this game."
Mm-hmm. What time's curfew tonight, the eve of the Canadian Bowl?
Coach called a meeting. Coach Snoop called a meeting for 11 o'clock. So the guys will get together at 11 p.m. tonight, Saskatoon time, obviously, and have a chat and just kind of, final thoughts and feelings before the big night, and then they'll be sent off to ideally go straight to bed. But I know I'm going to have a hard enough time sleeping, so I can't imagine that a lot of these guys are going to hit the pillow and pass out. But, I think Coach just wants them in their room and focused and just relaxed.
The 2010 Canadian Bowl between the Raiders and Hilltops kicks off Saturday, 11 a.m. BC time. Catch the live video stream at viraiders.ca. For a complete list of all the BCFC All-Canadians, click the link on the BCFC homepage. Until next time, I'm Ryan Waters.